This is the Door Knocker podcast, where we dive into the explosive growth of the sales industry. We take an in-depth look with the industry's top talent to uncover what has made them successful as salespeople, leaders, and entrepreneurs. We believe all of life's opportunities are just behind the next door. With that being said, opportunities knocking. I'm your host, Zach Ross. All right, Casey, I appreciate you coming on today. Been talking to Lee for a long time about getting you on, so I appreciate you carving out some time. How you doing today? How's your week going so far?
It's going fantastic. I have a lot to be grateful for and not too much to complain about. And honestly, nobody really cares what you complain about anyway, so it doesn't do me any good to go. I'm not overhyping it to say I'm super happy and feeling good, and life's really good right now.
Good to hear. So yeah, my first initial major question, obviously because of what this podcast is why'd you get into the door-to-door industry?
Kind of by default. Like, if you would have asked me out of 100 jobs, which one would I choose to do at 21 years old, I think door-to-door sales would have been bottom of the list. Maybe 100. I didn't ever have, and and if I'm being truly honest with myself, I thought I was better than the job. I thought that it was kind of work that was beneath me, that I was going to go do real business, and that's, kind of a lesser job. And it's amazing how, when life changes, your perspective changes. And, for me, I remember going around Utah County. I went down to Utah Valley to go play baseball, and there's, BYU and Utah Valley are the two universities, and there's 100,000 students kind of in this little valley, and all of these wage jobs, that would be your traditional jobs. There was just massive competition for the most entry-level menial jobs. And I remember not being able to get a job at a waiter at a local restaurant and having a pile of applications. Everybody was fighting for those $10 and $8 and $11 an hour jobs. And I realized I don't have any skills that are worth anything to the market. I'm a body. I'm a warm body. And, that it was a humbling experience to realize, as a man and as a provider and as I had kind of aspirations for myself, and realizing I had a long way to go. And then also I met, my wife when I was down there, and we started getting more serious. And, I grew up Mormon, and, my faith's really important to me. And so, marriage just happens quicker in that environment.
Right.
And so all of a sudden, things progressed. We were 6 months into it, we're talking about getting married. And all of a sudden I realized, I got to square up my shoulders, and I got to go figure out how to provide, not just for me, but for somebody else. And I think that's where my view shifted on door-to-door sales. I had some friends who'd gone out and made professional money in the industry, who'd made six figures doing the job. And all of a sudden, this job that wasn't very attractive was the most attractive thing in the world. And, I had really good mentors to get me into it. I had one of my good friends, that I grew up with, a kid named Doug Robinson, who's actually a CEO over at Legacy Power, that, he had gone out and been really successful, and he recruited me, and I ended up going to this little satellite company called Atlas Marketing. And I went out and I made 50 grand that first summer. And, I remember coming home after that summer and was just so empowered and so proud of what I had done and the person that I'd become. I worked, I really did. I worked so hard. I didn't cut any corners. I gave it my best effort, and the market and this company paid me $50,000, when before I was peddling with my hat out and couldn't get $9 an hour, And that was a real turning point for me, where I realized my skill set at any given time, if things get bad for me in life going forward, and I went through some really hard times, I had a skill set that I could take care of my family. And I didn't realize where that would come in, how important that would be to me, but it did give me confidence to go pursue bigger things. And so it was so fundamental, door to door. I was with a group of guys last night, and I'm a consultant at Vivint, but it's a very passive role at this point. There is no day-to-day, interaction, but I love connecting with the people who are doing the job, because it is so meaningful to me. I mean, everything that I have in my life came from that opportunity of going out and knocking doors. And I truly do. I feel it's the American dream. I feel like it's, as blue collar and as kind of raise yourself up from your bootstraps. And it's an equal opportunity employer. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor. It doesn't discriminate. It's a very fair, very honest profession. And I loved it. So that was kind of how I started. And I was in the industry for 17 years, and it was life-changing for me.
So, yeah, ton of good nuggets. I like to back up a little bit. So I come from a baseball family, so anytime anybody brings up what position did you play?
I played catcher.
Catcher. Okay, so yeah, yeah, okay. So do you think any of that discipline had any effect on knocking doors?
No, absolutely. I mean, without a doubt, the what you bring to the doors is everything that you've done in life up until that point. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Like I realized I was not very strong mentally and emotionally. I thought I was, but I wasn't. I got my ass handed to me on the doors, and I don't know. You've ever cried on the doors, but I found myself grown man crying on the doors, and I'm just like, this is a low moment. I'm rock bottom right now, and so it really does. It tests you to your absolute limits, which is why I'm so grateful for it.
Yeah, I definitely have had my fair share of that. I think we all have. So Atlas Marketing. So what were you actually selling for them? You were selling satellite. So was it like a satellite service?
Yep. We're a retailer for Dish Network and DirecTV. I worked there for 3 years. And honestly, it was, again, life-changing opportunity. We were a small company. We grew really fast. I went from, I had experiences as a manager and as a regional manager probably much sooner than I would have, because the company was just, it was 2 or 3 offices when I got started, and we grew it to one of the bigger retailers in the country for Dish Network and DirecTV. And then in 2007, the company ended up going out of business. It got caught up in kind of the financial collapse, and, some of the owners were doing some stuff in real estate, different businesses, and just got over their skis and ended up making some decisions that put the business in peril. And, so and that was a real tough thing for me. I lost, all of my money that I'd made for 3 years. I'd invested it with the owner, and he ended up losing it. I was buying real estate myself, and, what looked like a good investment all of a sudden became a bad investment really fast. My job that I'd spent 3 years developing, and I was a regional manager, all of a sudden that job didn't exist. And in the course of a month, 2 months, I felt like I had all this momentum and this foundation that just came tumbling down. And the one thing that I had was a skill set. I knew how to sell. I knew how to lead. I knew how to recruit. I knew how to develop leaders. And that this is actually a super impactful lesson that I learned through that process, is that sometimes, in my life, I have so many examples of failures that end up being the exact thing that I needed at that point in life to go level up to the bigger opportunity.
Wow.
And I never would have started at Vivint if that company wouldn't have gone out of business. And, Vivint was this life-changing run that I got to experience. And I wouldn't have even, I never would have switched because I was happy. So
I've had a similar experience to what you're talking about, Casey, even this year with Lee, where even with COVID, right? Like I had this little production company doing events, and COVID happened, and I got completely clipped, and everything went away, right? Events went away, everything went away. And then, this relationship with Lee Barber kind of just came organically through a couple of people that knew a couple of people, right? So I very much relate to that situation. Now with the satellite stuff, so that were you just in Utah, or did you kind of open up multiple offices?
We were all over the country. It was a very similar model to, Vivint or a lot of these other door-to-door companies, where it was a summer model where, primarily based in Utah and Idaho and Arizona as far as recruiting. And then we would go out kind of all over the country in the summer and go sell. And then it's kind of a college-based, younger, go work for 4 months and make all your money for 4 months, then come back and go to school. The majority of the people who worked with you, that was kind of their life situation.
Yeah, I feel that. So this company, fortunately, unfortunately goes out of business for you. And was it like the next day Todd Peterson's walking down the street and you guys rub shoulders, or how did you?
It wasn't the next day, but it was kind of over the course of 2 to 4 weeks. And, it was just, there was a lot of change happening in the market, and these guys had made good decisions, and they had a good balance sheet, and they were in position to go get opportunistic and pick up some talent. And all of a sudden we had 300 reps that were available. And there's a couple of other companies that got into the mix, and it got competitive. And, some of the guys end up going to multiple different places, and we ended up going to Vivint.
So you brought your team over with you, is basically
I wish I could say that I did. There was some people that came, but it was just a bad experience. Think about going and working all summer and not getting paid. You did the work, you fulfilled on your end, the company fulfilled on their end.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people that just, lost confidence with the opportunity. And even, I can't remember anybody that was mad at me, but they were just kind of, I'm not, going to sign up for that again. That wasn't a good experience. And so we had to start over. We had a handful of people that came with us, but for the most part, we started over.
So you came in just as a door knocker? Did you come in as a regional? What was your role originally with Vivint?
Yeah, came in as a rep, ended up managing that first summer, but just started at the bottom of the food chain. What I did have was my back was completely against the wall.
Yeah.
And I was super hungry. And looking back again, you don't realize the benefits, but I was competing against a lot of people that had a good situation for a long time, and they weren't battle ready. They weren't as motivated as I was. And so I was able to just blow past a lot of the competition, I think strictly just because I was hungry and worked harder. That it wasn't a talent thing. It was just an effort. And a lot of that was driven by just losing everything. And my boats were burned. I was completely committed. And as I look back, it was such a blessing. It positioned me where, with the gas in my tank to go succeed in a hard industry. I mean, you guys know the industry. It's not easy to go pump yourself up and go create the motivation both for yourself and those you lead to go succeed in this industry.
So how many alarms the first year?
Sold 300 my first year.
Yeah, of course you did.
It was sell 70 before the summer and sell 230 in the summer. It was a solid summer, but it wasn't. I think I finished top 10 in the company as far as sales, but it happened over. Back then, people didn't do much preseason, and I had 60, 65 or 70 accounts before the summer started. So I just had a big head start.
So for a lot of people, ironically enough, that listen to this, fortunately for me, have no clue half the time. They've never knocked a door in their life. They just like the podcast. So if you could explain, what's a preseason mean? What does it look like? What's that entail?
Companies, they have a model that's based in the summer. So 85, 90% of their total volume, their total subscribers that they bring onto their company happen within a 4 to 5 month period of time. And it's, the majority of the kids who work for them are college age, that are going to college or just finished up high school, that, are going to go take these summer months. And instead of hanging out or taking a summer job, they end up going and knocking 6 days a week. So it's really focused. It's, high accountability, high production. And, but anything before those 5 months is considered preseason. And so I started selling those, in November, December, January, February, March. you know, to prepare, and because I needed to. I'd never sold alarms before.
Right.
I satellite, so I needed to go get that foundation if I wanted to go manage a team.
Are you in Utah during this time?
I was in Utah, but it was really, and again, it's fun to talk about this stuff because you pull up these memories. I remember going to my wife and just saying, I'm driving to Arizona and I'm not coming back till I sell 10. And that was as raw as my plan was leave at the front of the month with an open-ended return date, and 10 accounts was as much money as I needed to pay my bills. And I'd drive out there. We were sleeping on a mattress in a little apartment in Arizona, and we'd go sell 10 as fast as we could and come home, and I'd get my guys trained. And, looking back, I mean, those are special moments. We had just really awesome bonds with everybody that was kind of in that same spot. We all grew together.
So the idea for you initially was like, look, I need to sell 10 alarms, and then I need to sell, 70 by summer. And then, okay, I've sold 300. So now do I go, what's Casey? What are you thinking? Are you thinking like, or is the opportunity already presented, to manage, to get a team?
It was already presented. I was already in it long-term. I was committed, 5 years. And Todd kind of spelled out, hey, we're a young company. We just took money from Goldman Sachs. We're going to put an equity pool in place that, you can go get equity in the company if you go perform. And so there was a real clear path, which I'm so grateful for. I don't think I would have given the effort that I gave if I didn't have that plan. And so there was no hesitancy. It was just fully committing to that plan.
Yeah, I can relate to that. And then so a lot of like, especially from what I've heard with Vivint, like there's multiple regionals and vice presidents, and for a long time there was a bit of competition, right, between the different organizations. I can't remember the name of your organization. Was it?
It's changed a lot. The company has changed a lot, and so there's been a lot of different names of organizations, over the years. But we had a region, and then we had a division, and then the company restructured. We kind of came together and had it all under one umbrella, and then we kind of decentralized again and then came back together. So there's been a lot of different strategies on how to organize the sales force based off of the needs of the company. I mean, along the way, we rolled out an internet business. We rolled out a solar business and split that off and took it public. And there was just a lot of, changes that were happening. And based off of those, the organization kind of twisted and turned and changed over the years.
Yeah. So then how many years until you started managing, you were a regional what did that process look like?
It happened really quick. I sold for 2 years, managed teams and regionally managed my third year. And the fourth year, we were the top region in the company. We did 25,000 accounts our fourth year. And so we just kind of went from nothing to a lot of accounts pretty quickly. And I think it goes back to that plan, beginning with the end in mind and having clarity on what your goal is and what you're trying to accomplish. I mean, we had that blueprint before we ever got started. We would, in my mind, it was done before we ever got started. And so it was just about going and doing the work. And I think that certainty and that conviction, was the reason that we had kind of took the massive action that we took and got the results that we got, was because we had this certainty and this plan that we were all committed to.
So you're already like applying Stephen Covey into your life, 7 Habits. I mean, it's already happening.
When I was on my mission, I read every book that he had ever read, or every book that he had ever written. And so, he was just so impactful to the way that I thought about life, the way that I saw the world. And it really did. It's impacted me, in my relationships, in my health, in my education, in my marriage, kind of that whole person paradigm that, us as people, we're whole people. You've got spiritual needs, you've got social, emotional needs, you've got physical needs, and you've got, mental needs, and the kind of wrapping all those together and having a holistic plan matters a lot. And so kind of having that view or that philosophy on how to see the world really did impact, and to this day impacts a lot of my decision making.
Yeah. Wow. So you start, and Lee and I have been talking about this very much so recently, especially for recruiting. For a long time, I mean, I'm 30, so 31 now. And for a long time, I always wanted to, because my initial I started knocking storm roofing in Charleston, South Carolina. That was like my deal. We'd knock storm. And, the recruit for storm was always, look, man, like, you knock this many doors, you're going to make this much money. And it's a really savage industry. I mean, very much like alarms. And so my initial instinct always when I want to start to build a team or bring people in or recruit is money, 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 right?
Yep.
And I believe Lee very much changed my paradigm with this whole entire situation, know your value and know your worth. So what do you feel like you were bringing that made so many people want to be kind of with you guys?
Culture is who we are and what we do, and so people talk a lot about culture, but it really boils down to kind of the type of people we are, our character, and what we do, our actions, that's ultimately your culture. And, for us, we had like a plan. I remember, going and reading a lot of coaching books, and somebody who inspired me a lot was Urban Meyer, who at that point, he'd managed, or he led University of Utah to, an undefeated season. Then he went and won some national championships at Florida. And then he went and won national championship at Ohio State. And he had written a book. And before he took his first coaching job at Bowling Green, he went to Lou Holtz and he said, "Hey, this isn't a very good job." And Lou Holtz said, "Well, why do you think they're asking you to go do it? You're not a very good coach," and he said, "Well, that's fair enough." And so it was his first shot to go be the man. And he put this plan, he put kind of his philosophy or his thesis down on paper, and he really mapped out his plan to win. And I think the battle truly is won in the general's tent. And, he had this blueprint, and he used that blueprint and, critiqued it and evolved over time. And that impacted me so much. And so we put together our plan to win. We had really very specific things on our culture and what we wanted to accomplish and all of those things. And so, it was a holistic, we focused on that whole person paradigm where, part of it's money. Money's very important, but it's not everything. You can pay people financially, but there's also other ways to pay them. If you pay them spiritually, and my definition of spiritual is growing and giving, growing and contributing and giving back. And if you can provide an environment where people are growing and also that they're grateful and they get to give back, they feel this spirituality and this fulfillment that all of us as humans, we have that need to grow and to give back, to contribute. And then also mentally, just that you're progressing and you're learning and you're getting better and you're getting skills and you're getting stuff that, makes you a better person. And then also social emotionally, like, do I like the people that I work with, and do they like me? Are we a brotherhood? Are we a family? And if you don't have those ingredients, somebody's going to leave you, that they're going to go find them somewhere else, because they're human needs that we all have. And if you're not fulfilling them here, you're going to go fulfill them somewhere else. And so we're very, sensitive to make sure that our culture and what we did encompassed, paying people in all those areas, not just the physical. We knew, making good money was just a requisite. People needed to make good money, but it's not everything, and so that's the piece of it that I think differentiate us from everybody else. Is the easy place to go is the money, because it's so visual, but it's actually one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, definitely. So how long until how old are you now then? So we're 3 years in, you've got your own team, you're managing, how old are you at this point?
I'm 38.
You're 38. Well, back then in the story. So
I went from 24 to 27.
24
before I started regionally managing.
Okay. And then, you become a partner at Vivint, you get a bunch of stocks and a bunch of shares, you become a VP, right? How does that relationship and situation happen?
That they just had an equity pool for regional managers where you got a piece of the upside based on the accounts that you did. And my situation was different. Most of my equity that I got at Vivint, I actually purchased. So it was a real unique situation where I'd made some money. And one of the co-founders of the business, a guy named Keith Nielsen, who wasn't active in the business at that point, wanted to sell some of his shares as a secondary. So he wanted to go sell, a third of his shares. And Todd, we were working out, and he said, Keith's going to sell some shares. I'm like, well, can I buy them? And he's like, I don't see why not. And so anyway, and it's so funny because I was so naive back. All I knew was I was looking for a big opportunity. I had 400 grand in my checking account, and and so just me, I'm like, I want to go way bigger than that. How can I go bigger than 400 grand? And so I was like, who would lend me money to go put more into this deal? So I was ahead of the Robin Hood time. I was ahead of everything else. I was leveraging money, before it was cool. But and I remember I was like, Keith would lend me money. He understands the shares. So I go to the guy who's actually selling the shares. I'm like, Keith, will you lend me money to buy your shares? He's like, I will, but it's going to be really expensive. And I'm like, well, what's really expensive? And he's like, 24%. I'm like, okay. And I'm doing this math in my head where I'm like, okay, how much could I borrow? I could make eight grand a month payment, like really easy.
Right.
And so I was like, I'm going to borrow enough to fit within an $8,000 payment. And so I said, Keith, will you lend me 400 grand? He's like, yeah, I'll do that. So now I have 400 grand at 24%, like hard money rates. But I'm pumped because I know I'm getting a really good deal on these shares. And I go back to Todd, and Todd's like, that's a terrible deal. He's like, that's so expensive. I'm like, well, like, what should I do it for? He's like, max 12%. And so I'm like, well, would you do it for 12%? He's like, yeah, I do it for 12. And so I'm like, okay, I'll take 800 grand. So it all came down to a payment, and it was the same payment for me to borrow 800 grand as it was 400 grand. So I literally borrowed 800 grand, put 400 grand in. And over the course of, it's probably been 12 or 13 years now, I think I've made 28 to 30 million bucks off that 400 grand. So it was a $400,000 bet plus 800,000 of leverage that's turned into 28 million bucks 12 years later.
I don't think Robin Hood has that option.
No, that was a pretty good bet.
So, okay. Wow. Well, yeah. Okay. So you buy stock in the company. How are you 30 then?
Yep. I think I bought it 27, 28.
So at this point in your life, because I know, I do Sunday planning now because of Lee, because of you. And I know obviously Sunday planning didn't originate with you, but you're definitely the conduit for me. You're the pipeline, not the well. And so how much of this is going on? Because I know, you recently posted about a purchase that you made of a asset that you wanted for a long time. And, you said you had been writing about, I want to own a plane. And it was something that, it was a Hail Mary, right? And at probably about the time you started writing it. So at this point in your life, what are your goals? Are you still doing? Are you practicing the same things then? Your Sunday planning?
I mean, a lot of these practices have kind of, I learned them just from books. The top 10 originated from a book called Goals by Brian Tracy. And, just kind of took that and implemented it in my life. And it's kind of been a practice that I do, once or twice a day, every day. And it's a really, really simple practice. It takes, 1 minute, 2 minutes, just listing out the stuff that's important to you. It's amazing how if you get in the habit of that, you actually get clarity on what's important to you. Just asking the question of what's important to me. I don't think many people do it. And so you have these conflicted views of, you're kind of going down two tracks at the same time, where this creates focus, and it creates kind of a decision matrix where if two options are presented to you, you know which one to say yes to and which one to say no to based off of what's important. And so, Sunday planning for me originated on my mission. They as missionaries in my church, you'd go plan on Sundays. And then I kind of built off that with Stephen Covey with 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And he had a follow-up book called Put First Things First. And it, talks a lot about structure with planning. And, we could do a separate, podcast just on planning alone, but it's something that's became so critical for me. It's the activity that, makes all the other activities better. So, and started doing it at like literally 21 years old, and I've done it ever since.
So did you have any foresight with this? I know at 21, you and I shared the same thing. I worked in music my whole life. I toured. I did live sound. I had a really successful career with that. I always had a dream of, owning a production company and providing gear for concerts and festivals and stuff. And that dream was coming to fruition. And a friend of mine said to me one time, he owns a very successful roofing company. He said, listen, he goes, you want to own a business, you need to go knock doors for 2 years. And then I'm, researching online and I'm like researching with Tony Robbins, and Tony Robbins says the same stuff. And a lot of these guys, as you know, a lot of these entrepreneurs, the Jordan Belforts of the world, these guys like yourself are knocking doors. That's what they're doing the first 2 years out of college, or instead of college, or after their mission or whatever. So at that time, was this like, at the time of when you're starting this, did you see any of this happening for you?
I really didn't, man. This is kind of my philosophy on kind of goal setting, even life in general. It's like driving down the highway at night with your lights on, where you can see, but you can only see so far. And so you really do kind of have to have a GPS or a map that kind of tells you where you're going, that you actually have confidence in that it's the right map. So if your GPS is all screwed up and it keeps taking you to the wrong spot, you won't have any confidence to follow it. And so just, spending the time to actually make sure that, hey, I got the right GPS or I got the right map, then it allows you to drive faster and to kind of, really optimize the technology. But then the second piece is you kind of have to have faith. It's this principle that God has a plan for me. My life has a purpose, that I'm here to go make a difference, and that, everything's happening for me and not to me, that, any negative circumstance, it was all part of the plan. It's going to give, just having this life is happening for me mentality. It's amazing how it just kind of becomes true if that's how you see the world. And so that all I can say is just faith factored in. But as far as how the thing would work out, my vision was as big as it could be in that moment. It was as far as I could see at that moment. And it's amazing how when you level up, you kind of see another level of opportunity. And that's the beauty of life, is just progressing and getting better. If, the table of success should only be sat at for so long, magic is in the process.
Wow. Yeah, that's a nugget. So you get stock, you get this great deal with Todd to get this hard money loan, and you buy a bunch of more stock, and then Vivint. How far along after that does Vivint get sold?
2 years later, Vivint got sold to Blackstone for like $2 billion. And my investment went from I think it 3x'd my money. And so 1.2 million went to 3.6 million. I paid off the loan, so I had 2.8 million left. And then I rolled that into the company and I put another 1.2 million in. So not only did I not take chips off the table, I doubled down. So I think I had $4 million of my own cash in the deal when Blackstone came in. And, 8 or 9 years later, just this last year, I got, optimized a lot of liquidity with Vivint Solar getting sold to Sunrun and Vivint going public. And so I'm just, it's kind of overnight successes that are 20 years in the making. You know what I mean? Everybody sees the fruits, but they don't see the roots. They don't see the struggle. They don't see the, crying on the doors. They don't see sleeping on a mattress in Arizona. They don't see any of the bad. They only see the good, but the reality is every strong tree has really deep roots. And I think every great human has their foundation and their roots that give them the foundation to go build off of, and so my mentality on growth is you constantly have to be building that foundation. You got to be, sweating when other people are resting. I love kind of that, even that baseball mentality of I'm going to be hitting BP and I'm going to be, grinding and getting better when everybody else is sleeping. Like that's where you get the advantage.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And I guess I'm going to circle back a little bit too. So a lot of things that you see with the door-to-door, which is exactly what you're talking about. Like, for example, a guy, let's see, we can use Lee as an example, but, someone that started knocking doors and decided, I'm going to start my own company like yourself, and they go start their own company. They get a little team together, and like all good door-to-door teams, somebody looks at a guy and he's not knocking anymore because he's doing the back end work, and he thinks, my boss doesn't knock and he doesn't do anything anyway, so I'm going to take everyone in the room and I'm going to run out and I'm going to go over here, right? And I'm going to go start this other company on this side of town and whatever, right? So did you ever have that experience with Todd or at Vivint where you had an option to leave, or, something came up on the table where, I'm out, I'm going to go to another company, and you decided to stay? Or
Yeah, I mean, if you're in an industry where there's very low switching costs, and there's opportunity everywhere, there's at any time you could go get a better short-term deal somewhere else, and so I think it's more for me, if I would have not got burned as bad as I got burned with Atlas, I probably would have been more eager or maybe less grateful, or had more times when I was looking somewhere else. But the reality was, like, I was bought into what the company was doing and where it was going. Outside of that, like, Todd stepped up for me at a time when I was at the lowest point in my professional life, and he stepped up and he had my back, and I just wouldn't do it to him. That's it. Loyalty is very important to me.
Yeah.
And so, and it's not blind loyalty. I mean, he had over delivered at every step of the journey. So it wasn't like he didn't do his part. And I feel like for me, I tried to over deliver. I always try to over deliver on my part. And so, that's a good relationship is when each side feels 100% accountable for the results. And I can promise you, if somebody's leaving you, you got to look yourself in the mirror and say, I'm not doing enough, because, there's always something that you can do better.
Yeah.
Something else that Vivint did really well is they put really good long-term incentive plans in place and residual plans in place. And now they have equity plans in place. And so structure matters a lot. Having a compelling future for somebody to come work with you matters a lot, because you have to understand they're going to have a lot of opportunities. And the other piece to the puzzle is you better stay close to the doors. The minute that you start kicking up your feet and sitting in the back office is the minute your team's going to walk out on you, because they feel like you're, over leveraging their skill set. And so, and again, bringing this back to Vivint and Todd, like, he works harder than anybody else at that company. So no one has an excuse not to grind, because he's grinding harder. And that's what a real leader does. A real leader leads. So.
Yeah. Great nugget. So going back to you, Blackstone buys Vivint gets sold, and your overnight success. So it's 20 years in the making, and your life changes. And what I see a lot with a lot of people in my life, even in my immediate friendship, is they have a similar opportunity and it happens, and they kick their feet up, right? So, but what I've seen with you, just in the short time I've followed you on Instagram, etc., is you didn't just kick your feet up, right? Like you definitely, I believe you put your foot on the gas pedal. So I think some of those things are, if you could just touch on, especially just like you're teaching at BYU and kind of like your current business ventures, the restaurant stuff and etc. Like, kind of what changed and what was your goal at that point? Like, what did you want to do?
In my mind, I always saw myself as an entrepreneur, and I was always running my own business. I was just running it with under the Vivint umbrella. So for me, it wasn't unnatural to go start a business. I always felt like I was running a business. And, the beauty of Vivint is they created that environment that was extremely entrepreneurial, that, outside of just being in the business, there was a culture of investing and, investing in startups, investing in real estate, and taking your capital and put it to work. And so there was this kind of venture capital culture. There's this private equity culture. There's this entrepreneurial culture, and all those things are probably why I stayed as long as I stayed, was because, I could do those things. And, there's just times and seasons in life for everything. And I'd been at Vivint for a long time, and a lot of those other investments that I'd done had started to come to fruition in a way where they were kind of taking my time away from being at Vivint. And it was just that there was a natural transition that took place, where we could transition into a consulting role, and we could go pass the baton to the next generation of leaders to go step in our shoes. And they've done a phenomenal job. The guys that we worked with have stepped into that role, and they're just crushing it. They're absolutely crushing it. And so it's so fun to be able to see people that you worked with and help mentor and help lead that have kind of stepped into the shoes that you left and are doing it better than you did it. So, and for me, it was just a transition. So it was a time and season. And that chapter of my life with Atlas was beautiful. And those chapters, my life with Vivint, it was life changing. I loved every second of it. And this is kind of a new chapter, and I want to go recreate myself, and so the things that I'm passionate now, I'm passionate about venture capital. I'm passionate about real estate. I'm passionate about, private equity and just doing deals. I love doing deals. And so we have a couple of businesses that we own that we're growing. We have a food and beverage business that we have a lot of restaurants. We have over 40 restaurants, and, we're growing a couple of those brands pretty aggressively. We have a real estate business, a manufactured housing business that we own 70 communities and have a big growth plan this next year. And then we have, a lot of other private investments that we do that we help kind of mentor leaders and place capital. And so it's fun right now. It's a really fun opportunity to just go do deals, but it's actually not different work than I did door to door. And the exact skills that I learned door to door, the skills that I use every day and kind of doing deals.
Yeah, I can definitely, I can see how that translates so well. And then what about your teaching at BYU? So, are you full-time there? How often are you there?
I've taught a class the last 3 semesters. It's Intro to Entrepreneurship. One of my good friends has taught that class for 7 years. And when I finished up at Vivint, he approached me about coming and co-teaching the class with him. And it's really great. What I loved about Vivint, what kind of connected with my soul, was the ability to mentor and help people develop skills. For me, it was so impactful. It literally changed my life to go from no skills to a skill set that was worth a lot in the marketplace. And so to help people do that, it was so fulfilling. It still is fulfilling. And so stepping out from doing that for the day to day, I lost that, and so BYU's kind of been a great opportunity to fill that bucket of being able to help and mentor kind of young, talented, aspiring leaders, and, helping wherever I can to give those guys direction, guys and girls to pursue their dreams and have the confidence to pursue their dreams, and the philosophy and the map to go pursue their dreams. So it's been really fun. I've loved it. I've done it 3 semesters, plan on keep doing it. It's not a huge time commitment. It's 1 day a week, but it's really great.
Yeah, some of my fondest memories are college, so I can relate. I love the classroom. I'm a lot like you. I love the classroom. I love learning. It's one of my favorite things in general. And I think probably the most important thing to you is your family, right? So I know you definitely they're definitely the light of your life. So I know you've recently adopted a child, and well, not recently, but what's that process been like? What's the family like for you? I know you're a busy guy. You got a lot going on, and how do you take some time out for that? How does that fall in line?
Yeah, always. I mean, it's like there's a handful of things that actually matter in life, and it's relationships, and specifically your intimate relationship, your relationship with your significant other. And that, if you have that thing right, life is beautiful. Life is great. And if it's wrong, life is hell. It brings the highest to highs and the lowest to lows. So that one's one that you definitely need to spend time and effort and energy to make sure that you value where you spend your time, money, and energy. And so you better allocate enough time, money, and energy to the stuff that's actually meaningful to you. So for me, I have kind of a big value on my family. And so I spend significant time, significant emotional energy, and we allocate resources to go spend time as a family. And the same thing with my wife. And, so the family's number one for me.
Yeah, there's a saying that I live by. It's you love what you serve, right? And
Absolutely.
and I really I can relate to that. My girlfriend and I have been together for 12 years, so it takes a lot of effort, a lot of time, and yeah. Where do you kind of see, I know we touched on it a little bit. Well, where do you kind of see like life after Vivint? I know, with the business ventures, but where do you kind of see yourself in the next 10 years?
I'm doing exactly what I'm doing. I have kind of a little family office right now that kind of runs all my real estate and investments and stuff like that. So, doing deals is like my favorite thing in the world, meeting people and doing deals. And then just building companies. I don't see myself kind of being the operator, the CEO that runs the company. but being able to step in and be an investor and be a board member and be a mentor and to help kind of aspiring young entrepreneurs go help build their companies is kind of where I see myself. So doing deals and, mentoring, that's kind of where I want to go spend the next 60 years.
I love that. Yeah. And then we'll wrap up because I know we're running out of time, but there's one question I've been asking everyone that comes on here, and I think it's probably one of the most important questions in relation to the door is, Casey, in your experience of knocking doors and lifelong journey in the industry, what is the most important thing for a homeowner? If a guy shows up to their door and he's knocking on their door and he's selling whatever it is, solar, Vivint, anything, what do you feel is the most important thing the homeowner needs to look for?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, for me, like people buy from people that they like. And so I think, and you communicate, not 90% of what you communicate isn't what you say. It's just who you are. And so if you can show up to the door with good energy and look somebody in the eye and just be yourself, it doesn't even matter what you say. 90% of what you're communicating is I'm a good person. I'm here to go, create value for you. And, if that's the case, if there's a need and you're going to be able to go do business with a lot of people, and the other thing you just have to be aware of is just, you're knocking on somebody else's door. You're interrupting their time. You're taking them kind of out of their day to day. And the reality is you're not going to catch everybody in kind of the optimal mood or the right situation or with the right time restraint to go listen to you. And so for me, it has less to do with the individual and it has more to do with just the consistency of the process. I know if I actually work the hours and have the numbers of contacts, that over time, I'm going to find the right buyer at the right time, and we're going to be able to go connect and do business. And so I think what I've seen with door-to-door guys is they get a level of proficiency and then they stop grinding the same way they did to when they, the effort that took them to get that level of proficiency. They don't put that same effort in going forward because they don't need to. They're good enough that they don't need to put in that same effort. And if you can keep that same effort and couple that with competency, that's where you have guys go break records because they keep the scrappy work ethic and then their skills improve. And that's where it's just, you have to talk to less people to go close. You just get better at your job. You become more professional. So anyway, that'd be my 2 cents on it.
I appreciate it, man. And again, Casey, thanks a lot for cutting out some time for us. It's been a real pleasure meeting you and getting to know you better. I'm definitely going to take you up on the offer to do another episode on planning. So we'll get in contact, man. All right.
I appreciate you guys having me, and I love what you're doing. I think, door to door for me it's like, immense gratitude for that opportunity. Everything that I'm doing in my life today and everything that I'm experiencing comes from knocking doors. So it's always going to be a part of me. And, anybody who's doing it, I've got so much admiration for them because it's not easy. It's actually really hard. And the ones who do it well and do it professionally, they create a lot of value for customers. And they also mentor a lot of young people and give young people skills that they have a skill set. You look at the whole reason you go to college is to go get a trade or get a skill set that's worth something to the market. And if you can go spend the time knocking doors, you're going to have a similar skill or a similar trade that's worth more to the market than a college degree would be. And so I just think you're creating so much value for the people you mentor and the people that you lead that my philosophy on business is a spiritual game, that it's not about just making money. It's about serving people. And if you can do that well, you're always going to have plenty of customers. You're always going to have plenty of employees that love you. Because you spend your life serving them.
Wow. Well, thanks for that closing remark, man. I couldn't
All right,
have had it any better. All right, man. Talk soon. Thanks a lot.